We heard from Boris Johnson a little bit earlier in the show, and he was pretty clear that he places the blame for the fact we haven't left the EU squarely at the door of Parliament. He says Parliament was going to rope-a-dope us, forcing more extensions, which means businesses can't plan, families can't plan. He's right, isn't he? It's Parliament who thwarted that leaving.
He's wrong. He's the Prime Minister. He's the one who's responsible. He wanted this job for so long. And he was prepared to say whatever he felt he should say in order to get that job without giving any real thought to what he would do. So he made a stupid promise that do or die, we would be out on the 31st of October, without actually planning how to do that. He then became Prime Minister, didn't actually try and negotiate a deal until the very last minute. I mean, Boris Johnson's only got himself to blame for the fact that he hasn't been able to keep the promise that he should never have made in the first place.
He tried, didn't he? He negotiated a deal, he put it to Parliament, he's done everything he could to try and get it through, and it's Parliament who thwarted him.
He spent 2 months mucking about...
He wanted to stop Brexit anyway.
I do want to stop Brexit, but he spent 2 months mucking about without even negotiating a new deal. It was only when Parliament said very clearly that we would not enable no deal that he even bothered trying to get a deal, and that shouldn't have been news to him. If he'd been paying attention, he might have realised that Parliament wasn't in favour of a no-deal Brexit. So, frankly, he's only got himself to blame, and we now have the opportunity to stop Brexit in this general election. The Liberal Democrats are clearly the strongest, biggest party of Remain, and we know there are millions of people out there who want us to end this chaos, stop Brexit, and get on with making people's lives better.
Well, let's talk about this election, shall we? Because in the Sunday Times today, they report that there's a Remain alliance where Plaid Cymru, the Lib Dems and the Greens are working together in up to 60 seats, where effectively 2 of the 3 parties stand aside to give the other a better shot. Is that right?
So the specifics of announcements will be made in due course, but it's well understood that these discussions have been taking place.
Is 60 seats in the region?
I wouldn't necessarily assume that the numbers are accurate, but we've been having those discussions because there are people in those different parties. These are parties that want to stop Brexit and remain in the European Union. And we found that in the Brecon and Radnorshire by-election at the beginning of August, we had a successful example of where Plaid Cymru and the Green Party didn't field candidates. They stood side by side with the Liberal Democrat, Jane Dodds, and we were able to win that seat and return to Parliament an MP who would campaign enthusiastically to remain. And that's what happened. So we're in those discussions and announcements will be forthcoming.
I mean, you're not shouting down the idea of 60 seats. I mean, we're talking dozens of seats. I'm just trying, because obviously it's very different, isn't it, if you're just talking about a small handful, or if you're talking about a large block that could actually impact the result of an election.
So I think it's fair to say that in the vast majority of constituencies, the party of Remain that is going to be best placed to win that seat will be the Liberal Democrats. But it's not universally the case. There will be some seats in Wales where it might be Plaid Cymru, and there might be a small number of seats where it's the Green Party. And of course, we should work constructively with those other parties to further our ultimate goal, which is protecting our place in the European Union so that we can have a better future.
What I don't understand is, if you really are determined to try and protect our place in the European Union, as you put it, why have you ruled out working with Jeremy Corbyn? Labour had promised a second referendum. I know you don't like him very much, but he is clearly perhaps the easiest and simplest route to getting a second referendum that could mean stopping Brexit.
Look, I mean, I certainly find the way in which he's refused to tackle anti-Semitism in his own party shocking and wrong. But this is not about my personal view of Jeremy Corbyn. This is about what he is doing on the issue of remaining in the European Union.
He's promising a second referendum.
I mean, we saw a sort of referendum, according to Rebecca Long-Bailey. I mean, that was painful to watch when you asked her, and you asked her again, what would Labour do in that referendum? Would you campaign to leave or remain? They cannot answer the question.
But it's irrelevant. They are promising a second referendum. Surely that is perhaps your best chance of getting what you want, which is to stay in the EU.
Look, it is not irrelevant to recognise that the Labour leadership do not even know even now, 3.5 years after that 2016 referendum, they do not even know whether they want to remain or leave. 19 Labour MPs voted for Boris Johnson's bad Brexit deal that will drive a coach and horses through workers' rights and environmental protections. It will be bad for our economy and our NHS, and yet 19 Labour MPs vote for that.
19 of how many who didn't vote the other way?
Look, but 19, it made the difference. Boris Johnson got his second reading because of Labour MPs. And then I hear Labour say that they want to try and have a jobs-first Brexit they'll protect. The reality is Brexit will be bad for jobs, it will be bad for workers' rights, it will be bad for the economy. It is not possible what they are arguing they want. Brexit will be bad for our country. That's why Liberal Democrats want to stop Brexit.
Now, I'm keen to talk to you about the debates as well. I know that many in your party have been pointing to the fact that you're the female leader of a major party, you haven't been invited to this first debate. Surely the reason you haven't been invited is because the two people who've been asked are the two people who've got the most likely chance of being the next Prime Minister.
I'm a candidate to be Prime Minister in this election, and frankly, when you look at the way Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn are carrying on, I think I could do a better job than either of them. If you look at the 2010 election and the run-up to that election, Liberal Democrats were polling around a similar amount than we are now. Actually, we're now much closer to the other parties in terms of the poll ratings. And in that election, we had Gordon Brown, David Cameron and Nick Clegg. Spot the difference. Well, I mean, frankly, you've got a suggestion from a broadcaster that it will be two chaps chatting about how they're going to leave the European Union, leaving out the voice for millions of Remainers who want to stop Brexit and stay in the EU, and happen to be a woman. Well, isn't that interesting? Because when it was Nick Clegg, there was no problem with him being in the debates.
But look at the number of MPs. I mean, the Labour and the Conservatives have a combined total of 542 MPs. The Lib Dems have 20?
Sure. But as I say, if you look at the comparison to 2010, right, you had Liberal Democrats still had far fewer MPs than the other parties, but Nick Clegg was okay to be in those debates. I mean, frankly, either it's sexist or they're scared, or maybe it's a bit of both. But I should be there as the voice for the millions of people in this country who want to remain. It is ridiculous to have a debate where on the biggest issue facing our country, you have an entire side of that debate unrepresented.
I mean, if there was an independence debate commission, something that Sky News has called for, then participation would be decided independently. Would that be a good idea?
Well, I certainly think that would make much more sense, because what you've got is two blokes stitching it up about what they're prepared to do. And as I say, looks like they're running scared, frankly.
Okay. Now, while I've got you, there's one final thing I want to